In this video, we're going to learn about SQLite3, the DB API for SQLite database with Python. My name is Salik Jonathan and welcome to this video. So the first thing we're going to do is to create our database. So with Python, we have the SQLite3 module that allows us to work with SQLite databases. Now the beauty with SQLite databases is we don't need a server running for us to access these databases. So they are file-based and extremely lightweight. They can be used for your small applications or medium-sized applications. So let's look at how to use SQLite databases with Python. So the first thing I'm going to do is to create a database. I'm going to create a file. I'm going to call this file database. So actually call it database.py. And within database.py, I'm going to create our connection as well as our cursor. So the first thing I'm going to do is to import the SQLite3 module because it comes within Python. So I'm going to say import SQLite3. And after importing SQLite3, the next thing is going to be to create our connection. So that connection specifies the database we're going to be using. So I'm going to create a connection object by saying connection is going to be equal to SQLite3 dot connect. And right now we're going to specify which database we're going to connect to. So the database we're going to connect to in this case, we're going to call it, let's call it example.db. So right now we are going to connect to a database called example.db. And from this connection object, we also go ahead and create a cursor from which we're going to execute our SQL statements. So I'm going to say cursor is going to be equal to our connection dot cursor. So the cursor is where we're going to execute the various SQL commands that we're going to run on our database. So after creating our cursor, let's go ahead and create our database. So I'm going to create a new file, and this new file is going to be called create database.py. So from the main file, I'm going to import, so I'm going to say from database, I am going to import the cursor, so I'm going to import our cursor as well as our connection. So right here, we're going to go ahead and create our tables in our database. So I'm going to call the cursor, and from this cursor, we're going to execute a command to create our database table. So let's say we're developing a simple application for a bookstore and we have our database basically keeping records about books. So we're going to create a simple table for books within our database. So I'm going to create a table. So within here, I'm going to write some SQL code. So I'm going to create these three quotations. And then what I'm going to do is to write the command that's going to basically create our table. So I'll say create table. And then this table, I'm going to specify the name of the book table. So I'll call this table book. And then I'm going to go ahead and specify the different fields this table is going to have. So if I create this book, then we're going to have an ID. Let's say an ID is going to be a real integer. And then we can also go ahead and create, let's say, the author of the book. And let's say this is going to be in terms of text. Let's say that each book has a title, so every book is going to have a title. And every title is also going to be in form of text. So we are also going to be having an ISBN for every book. So this is also going to be in text. So right now we see that we've written our simple SQL code right here that we're going to execute using our cursor. So if you're observant, this is not the same like how you write it for Postgres on MySQL. This is because SQLite has its own variant of SQL. So SQLite3 just basically provides us with an interface to execute these various SQL commands as executed with SQLite. So let's go ahead and commit this to the database. So for us to commit this to our database, what we're going to do is to call our connection. So we're going to say connection, and then we're going to specify that this is going to be connection.commit. So right after doing this, when I run this file, we expect that it's going to create our database. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. So I'll say Python 3 because I'm on Linux, and then I'll run create database.py. So this is going to go ahead and run our database within our and create a database within our current folder. An SQLite3 database is a file-based database. So in this case, I'm going to observe the tables we've created within this database using a tool called DB Browser for SQLite3. So I'm going to head over to that tool. I have it open here. I had opened up a simple table here. So what I'm going to do is to go and open up our table, and now open up this table. Right now we see that our book table has been created, and they have the various fields, for example the ID, the author, the title, and the ISBN. So when you go back to our code, let's see how we can insert some data in here. So I'll go ahead and create a simple file. So I'll call this insert.py, and within insert.py I'm going to go ahead and insert some data within this table. I'm going to close this, and I'm going to first import our connection as well as our cursor. So I'll say from database import, we're going to import the cursor as well as the connection. Now right after importing this, the next thing is going to be to execute the command for inserting something in our database. So I'll say cursor.execute. And right here, what I'll do is to go ahead and insert something. So I'm going to insert. So I'll come and insert. So I'll write insert. Then I'll specify the table we're going to insert in. So in this case, it's going to be book. Then I'll specify the values that we're going to insert into this table. So I'll go ahead and say that we're going to insert values. And in this case, we can be able to specify the values we're going to insert into our table. So for example, you may give ID as 1. Then you may give, let's say, the author as, let's say, Sally, Jonathan. And then let's say we had our title, let's say land, oh sorry for this. So you may say land. So I'm going to first close that. Let's say land Python, and then you may also provide an ISBN. So let me just create a dummy thing here. So right now we specify the values that we want to insert into our database. So right after doing this, the next thing is going to be to commit this to our database. So we're going to run this SQL code on our database and then be able to create this transaction. So I'm going to come right here and say connection, which is connection.commit. And when I call this is going to go ahead and insert our book in our database. So I need to open up the terminal, and when I say Python 3, so this is going to be insert.py. It's going to go ahead and create this book in our database. So if I go back to our DB browser for SQLite right here and I refresh, we now see that we have our book added to our database. So with the different credentials we've added. Now let's go ahead and add other books within this database. So if I go back to our VS Code, I can be able to make this program dynamic so that it can be able to add different books to our database. So I'll do here is to come and create a list of books. So I'm going to say books. This is going to be a list of books. Now each book is going to be a dictionary, and this book is going to have, let's say, an ID. So I'm going to give an ID of 1, and let's say we're going to bring an author. So an author, let's say that an author is going to be John the Baptist, and let's say the title of the book, let's say, is going to be Jesus is coming. So let's say Jesus is coming. So let's say the ISBN of this book is going to be let's say it's going to create some dummy text in here. So let's say that. So I'm going to copy this and paste it so that we have some dynamic data, some dynamic amount of books added onto our database. So I'm going to add a comma right here and copy this. And what we're going to do is to basically change this. So I'll change the ID to 2. Let's say Moses. Let's say the book they wrote is Learn JavaScript. So let's also create a book here. So we can say that this is going to be Maria, the author, and then we say let's say learn SQLite. So right here we have these different books. Now we can be able to loop through this list and be able to add this dynamically. So the way we can do that is to come right here. So what I'll do is to say for book in books, and what I'll do is to basically execute this command to insert every book within our database. So I'm going to come right here, and what I'll do is to basically substitute. So I'm going to use a certain syntax that's going to help us to add this dynamically. So what I'll do is to remove this. So I'll use question mark. I'll use the question mark syntax. So we need to add this question marks. And within these question marks, I'm going to go ahead and basically specify the values. So to substitute those values, I'm going to use this syntax. So I'll specify that I want to insert the ID, and then, so in this case, what you want to do is to basically get the ID, the author, the title, and the ISBN from all these dictionaries. So I'll use this syntax. So I'll say book. So I'll say book. Then I specify that in this case, we want to get the ID, then book.title, then book.isbn. So this will be book.author, book.title, book.isbn. So I'm going to also add the author here. So I'll say book, then specify that I want the author. So right after doing this, I'm going to save, and then finally we shall commit this. So if I come right here and run this file, so I'm going to run insert.py. It's going to be insert.py. Now all these are going to be added onto our database. So if I go back to our DB browser for SQLite and I refresh, we now have dynamic data that has been added to our database. So let's look at how we can be able to retrieve all these from our database. So we need to go back to our Visual Studio Code right here, and I'm going to create a file. So we need to create this file, and I'm going to say it's going to be retrieve. So this is going to be retrieve.py. So within retrieve.py, we're going to be able to retrieve these various books that we've added onto our database. So I'll import our connection and our cursor. So I'll say from database, we are going to go ahead and import our cursor as well as our connection. So from this, we're going to basically, so I'll write a simple for loop. So I'll say for I in, so I'm going to say cursor dot execute, and right in here I'll specify the SQL command I'm going to execute. So I need to write this syntax, then right in here I'm going to specify the query. So we shall run as select. So I'll say select all from, then I specify the table we want to select from. So in this case it's going to be book. Then I specify the criteria or the condition I want to execute. So in this case I want to select a book. So I'll say where the author, so let's say where the author is equal to, so I'll check some authors right here. So we have Sally Jonathan. So let's say where the author is equal to, let's say Sally Jonathan. So I'll go ahead and run this. So after doing this, then what I'm going to do is to execute this. So what I'll do is to come right here, and I'll go ahead and print I. So when I save this, I'm going to come and run this. So I'll run Python 3. In this case, we're going to run retrieve.py. So I'll run retrieve.py, and this is going to return the author, the book with the author of Sally Jonathan. I can also be able to execute and return one column for that specific query. For example, I can go ahead and say that I want to select, let's say I want to select the ID where the author is Sally Jonathan. So if I went back and run this, this is going to return the ID. We can do the same thing for the author. So we can say author. When I save this, we're going to return Sally Jonathan. Now let's look at how to, SQLite provides us with actually methods that can help us to also do this kind of things. So for example, we can be able to fetch all as well as fetch one. And let's try to look at how to do that. So I'm going to come right here. I'm going to create a file, which I'm going to call fetchone.py. And what I'll do is to import our cursor. So I'll say from database, I'm going to import our cursor, our connection. Actually, we're going to import connection as well as our cursor. And right after doing this, then we're going to do the same thing that we've done. So I'll just pull this up. So when I run this, so let's say we have, actually what I'll do is to basically, actually just call this. So I'll just add onto this query, I'm going to add dot, then I add the fetch one. So in this case we want fetch one, so I'll just kind of call this onto our query. So what the fetch one command or function does is to help us to get one item for a specified query. So if I were to run this, so I'll say Python, and this is going to be fetch one.py. This is going to return only one item for that specific query. So let's say I wanted to fetch all for that specific query. So to do that, I'll just come right in here and create a file called fetchall.py, and I can go ahead and copy this code. So I'll copy this code and paste it right here. So instead of running this code with fetch one, I'm going to run it with fetch all. And what it will return is a query set or a list, or let's say a tuple of objects or a tuple of items containing this specific criteria we use for searching. So if I came right here and said fetch, so in this case I'll change this to all.py, it's going to return a tuple containing all the items containing this kind of criteria. So in this case, you only have one book with that specific author. So let's say I wanted to also use, they also have fetchmany. So if I say fetchmany, so I'm going to say fetchmany.py. And what fetchmany.py is going to do is to actually do the same thing. So if I say .fetchmany, in this case, we're also going to be able to do the same thing. So if I run fetchmany.py, in this case, we also see that it returns a tuple of objects containing the item that has the field as we specified. So let's go ahead and look at how we can update data. So what I'm going to do is to close this, and what I'll do is to come right in here and create a file called update. Oh, sorry for this. I'm going to first remove this and create a new file. So the file is going to be update.py. And within update.py, I'm going to simply say from database, I'm going to import our cursor. So I'm going to import our cursor as well as our connection. So from this, we are going to basically go ahead and write an SQL command that's going to basically update a certain row. So let's go ahead and do that. So all I'll do is come and say cursor dot execute, and then I'm going to specify the SQL. So in this case, we're going to write the SQL right in here. So the SQL in this case is going to be, let's say, we're going to basically go ahead and update a certain row. So what I'll do is to come here and say, so in this case what I'll do is to write in the update. So I'll say update, then I specify what I want to update, which is the column I want to update. So let's say update author, let's say update, actually we specify the table name. What we shall do is specify the table name, and in this case I'm going to say book, and then I'm going to say set. I'm going to use the set command to update that specific column we want to update. So in this case we want to say that update book, then we say set, then you specify the column we want to update. So in this case, let's say we want to update the author, and then we say equals, then we want to specify the new author's name. So let's say Sally. Let's actually misspell Sally, so let's say Sally Jonathan, and then we specify where we want to actually update. So in this case, we can come and say where, then we specify the column that we want to update. So in this case, let's say where the author is equal to Sally Jonathan. So let me correct this. So this is going to be Sally Jonathan. So what this command is going to do is to actually update that specific column that has the author as Sally Jonathan right here. So I'm going to run this. So if I save, actually what I want is to commit this. So I'll say connection. Sorry for this. So it's going to be connection dot commit. So when we save this, actually here we have update. So when I save, I'm going to come right here, and when I run Python, it's going to be Python 3 update.py. So right here we have, actually it's going to be from database, sorry for that. So when I update this, it's going to run, and when you come right here and refresh, we now have our new updated data. So let's also look at how we can be able to delete a row from our database. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a file right here. So I'm going to create a simple file. Now this file is going to be delete, so I'm going to call it delete.py. And what this file is going to have is code that's going to allow us to delete a row from our database. So I'll say I'm going to import our cursor and our connection. So I'll say from database, we are going to go ahead and import our cursor as well as our connection. So I'm going to import connection. And after importing this, then the next thing is going to be to execute the code for deleting a row. So I'll come and say cursor dot execute, and I'm going to write the specific SQL. So I'm going to come right here, and I'm going to go ahead and run the command. So I'll say delete, then I specify the table name. So I'll say delete then I specify the table name. So in this case, we want to delete from the book table. Then you specify the item we want to delete. So I'll say where ID. So let's say where our ID is equal to, let's say 1. So right after doing this, then I'm going to just come and say connection dot commit. And right after doing this, I'm going to save, and when you run this, I'm going to come and say Python 3. So this is going to be delete.py. So once we've run this, when you go back to our DB browser for SQLite and refresh, we now see that our ID has been deleted. Now you see multiple columns have been deleted. This is because many books that we had the ID of 1. So in this video, we've been able to see how to use SQLite. And if you've come to the end of this video, thank you for watching, and see you in the next one. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new, and please leave a like and comment and tell me what you feel about this video. Thank you for watching, guys. See you in the next video. Bye.